Hello again. This is Pastor Tim from Bend and Lomita United Methodist Churches in Central Texas, trying to serve faithfully to Jesus Christ in the ministry to and with the world. We're trying to do our part in our place. We're sharing with you some of the biblical insights, some of the knowledge about Scripture, so that you might be able to understand Scripture a little bit better, maybe be challenged by it, maybe challenge us, your interpretation challenge us, but to put that on your mind so that you can delve deeply into Scripture and it becomes part of who you are and who we are together. And so that's why we're doing scriptural topics. Today we're doing the temptations of Jesus because that's part of the beginning of the Lenten season. This is today was the first Sunday of Lent, and we began a journey to Easter. You can go to any kind of event without any preparation, and it's fine. But if you want to really get the most out of something, you get prepared. You do the most to make sure your heart and your mind are ready to receive that. And that's the case with the resurrection. You can receive it without even doing any preparation, and it won't mean as much to you. So I think it can be more life-changing, more life-forming in that case. But Jesus began his ministry with the temptations. He was tempted 3 times. That was because if he was tempted 4 times, it'd have to be the temptations, and then have to begin singing. But he was tempted 3 times in the desert. He'd been fasting. Been described. The voice from heaven said, "You are my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased." He hadn't done anything yet, but he had to figure out what that identity was. What does it mean to be the Son of God? And so he went into the wilderness to figure out what he was going to do with his ministry, with his life. What was his purpose? He went into the wilderness because that is a traditional place where someone can contemplate such things. The wilderness is a place where life is on the edge. Everything is a little more dangerous. It's not safe. It's also less routine. You don't have all the things that you usually do to depend on to fill your day. You also don't have all the people that you usually depend on for their opinions and for discussion. You have to go in the wilderness by yourself because that's the place where you can be fulfilled. You can find out. You can spend time with God and find out what's going on in your life. So he went to the wilderness and he fasted for 40 days. And that makes you pretty hungry. There are different kinds of fasts. We don't know what kind of fast he was doing, but he didn't eat. So he was very hungry. And then it describes as the devil coming to talk with him. This was a way of just embodying temptations. I think these temptations were actually more that he did all his ministry. He was always tempted to do these things. And so he had to figure out what the purpose was in God. He had to not give in to the lesser temptations and fulfill the purpose and mission of God. These are not choosing one evil over good. This is choosing a lesser good over a greater good. He could have done these things, and he did do some of these things, but that was not the main purpose of his ministry. He said, first off, that he was tempted to turn stones into bread. Well, if you hadn't eaten for several days, you'd be tempted too. But the idea was not about food, it was about ministry. He could have made the ministry into taking care of people's needs. He could have fed the hungry. He could have healed the sick. He could have helped those who were disturbed in spirit, casting out demons. He could have done all those things and made people better. But then after he was gone, people would again be hungry, people would again be sick, people would again be disturbed. So he wouldn't have done anything significant in their lives. What his purpose was to connect people to God, to give them, connect them to the eternal, to the divine, and then their life would be fulfilled no matter what circumstances their body found itself in. And so he turned that down, saying, I'm not going to be about serving people's needs. I'm going to be about connecting them to God, which is their deepest and greatest need. He was also tempted to take a political stance. The devil says, I'll give you all the kingdoms of the world. In the first place, that was a lie. He didn't have authority over all the kingdoms of the world. God had authority over all of the earth. But Jesus, I'm sure, was tempted to become king. There were followers of him that were pushing him to do that. They wanted to throw out the Romans. They wanted to get rid of the corrupt king. They wanted to establish something better. Jesus could have done that. He could have even called divine power down to oust the present rulers. He could have ruled with justice and mercy. He could have ruled the way that God would wanted him to rule. But after he was gone, it would have gone back into something in the political system that people always try to aspire to for power and control. It's not about that. God's kingdom was about love and forgiveness and the power to live life to the fullest and to live for eternity. And so he would have taken a lesser good. He sometimes healed people. He sometimes challenged the powers that be, but he wasn't going to make a political kingdom because that would have been a lesser good. That would have only been temporary. He wanted to connect people to God. The devil also said, get up on the top of the temple and jump off, the God will protect you. Uses scripture, even the devil uses scripture. So Jesus said, do not tempt the Lord your God. In other words, he could have made the miraculous the center of his ministry. He could have made walking on water and calming storms a way to be admired by people. But Jesus was not about being admired by people. He didn't want other people to think about how wonderful he was. And he didn't want to take the doubters who would try to disprove what he did. He had something more significant to do. He wanted to connect God to eternity. So he didn't want to make the miraculous something impossible for people to aspire to. He didn't want to make that the center of his ministry. So he decided that what he was going to do was grasp with both hands the ministry that Jesus had from his Father, and that included having arguments with the powers that be. It included being disappointed by his disciples. It included people that didn't understand what he was teaching. It included arrest and death and then ultimately resurrection. But he had to choose that intentionally. As he began, he had to choose it intentionally as he went through his years of ministry. If he had not, we would not know the power of God in Jesus Christ. If he hadn't done that, it would have been a footnote in history that we wouldn't even be aware of. So that's what the temptations were about. We're going to talk about next time what the temptations mean for us, and then we're going to talk about what the temptations mean for the church. So I'll look forward to seeing you next time as we continue this journey.